Hey guys, I want to do something a little different. I wanted to talk about some of the top performing cards in Hearthstone right now and why they're so good. Just sort of this idea that sometimes people, in hindsight, can be like, "Oh, of course this card was good," but I think sometimes it's a little more subtle of why cards are good cards, why they do well, why they can dominate the meta. And I'm going to start with just briefly on an obvious one that isn't really an interesting one, but just to show you, this is currently the best card by drawn win rate in the game, Refreshing Springwater. You can probably guess number 2 and number 3 are Pexus Blast and then the Canter's Flow. And by drawn win rate, that means the games that you draw these, your win rate will be the highest. Part of the reason, I think Refreshing Springwater in a no minion mage is very obvious. You get one additional card for no cost. That's pretty obvious. And then with discounts, it can get even better. But you also can save it if your hand size is too big. So you can do it immediately or you can wait, and it's always there. Very strong card. Incredibly powerful. And I think that's a little bit more obvious. But I want to get some of the ones that I think are a lot more interesting, a lot more subtle, why they're good. And some of these cards are known to be very good, but I think people just think, oh, these cards are just good, and then kind of not understanding why they're so good. So we got Kazakh. And Kazakh, a very, very strong card. But I think people don't know exactly why it's good. And one of the big reasons is, one of the big costs, the opportunity cost, if your deck has no 4-cost cards, build a golem. So one of the nice things about this is it's 4 cost. And most decks have horrible 4-cost slots. They just don't have many good cards for 4 cost. So not only by having this card, it gives you a powerful potential to have a powerful 5-drop. So interestingly enough, or 5-drop or 1-drop or 10-drop, but it can really fill in that slot. So for a turn 4 play, very naturally. Another thing I said was sort of alluding on, it is flexible. So you can use it to get 5 mana worth of stuff. You can use it to get 10 mana worth of stuff. You can use it to get 1 for an immediate powerful pack. So by doing that, depending on how much value you have, you can decide, do I need tempo? Do I need value? And you can really sort of pick what do you think in this specific matchup. So that's the next thing is it's flexible. So if you're playing against a priest in a slow matchup, you can make 2 potentially 10-10 stealth minions. If you're playing an aggressive matchup, you might be able to get some board removal. If you're playing a matchup where your opponent's burning you in the face, you might be able to get lifesteal, even though your class doesn't have lifesteal. And if you don't have good single target removal, you might be able to get a poisonous. It has the Zephyrus effect where it allows a class to get a kind of card that they're fundamentally weak on. So certain classes might be very good at board clears, but they're not very good at single target, or vice versa. And Kazakh can kind of help that gap. So that's one of the big third things. So it's a 4-drop, but 4-drops usually suck. So lots of decks are running it, so it's nice too. It can fill in your curve. You can decide, you can take a 5 mana card. You're out of stuff, you can draw 2. If you have lots of stuff, you can make it more board, maybe summon a copy. It just has that flexibility. And it has the Zephyrus effect of being able to address weaknesses that your class doesn't have. So I wanted to example of a deck that people were running Kazakh and they stopped. It's a good example of why it's not always good. And some of the reasons. One, I think for Libram Paladin, people stopped running this to run Caryl. And Caryl is a card I'm going to go into later, but a very strong card. So one of the benefits of Kazakh, as I said, is there's not a lot of good 4-drops. Well, all of a sudden you have an incredibly good 4-drop, and all of a sudden Kazakh becomes less appealing. 2, I believe the Librams actually mess up the Kazakh, which I didn't even realize. But another third thing is Libram Paladin really wants to smack down Aldor Truthseeker on 5. So by playing Kazakhs, you actually, by playing Kazakhs, you can get another 5-drop, but you often have 2 5-drops. So it makes it so you do this kind of low tempo play, but then you're in this weird scenario. Do I go Aldor Truthseeker or do I go my 5-drop? So that's the thing of it. Just because a card is strong, the conditions met that make it good, it cannot be there. So it's a really good example of a situation where it's not very good, is the Libram Paladin. So anyways, next I got Efficient Octobot, and I think people know, this is reducing mana reduction is good, but why is it so good, especially in Rogue currently? And one of the big things that this has going on for it in general right now is its synergy with the Rogue card Field Contact. So after you play a battle cry or combo card, draw a card. So what is it, that card? It just that card makes all your battle cries and combo cards not cost value. It's an incredibly good card, but what's the weakness of it? Well, if I have to get up to 7-8 mana, if I play it and play one thing, it's very easy to remove. It's a 3/2. So your opponent's almost always going to remove it. And so because of that, it's hard to get value out of without the right synergy. So it can be a thing of you can only do a few things, or you can wait way late in the game, and you don't want to be waiting way late in the game with all these small cards in a very tempo-based deck. If you do that, usually the game's over. Efficient Octobot is where that changes things. Efficient Octobot is able to make your whole hand discounted. So let's say you have 6 things, you get 6 mana. You could even, be a situation where you go Efficient Octobot and spend 2 mana and go Hero Power to do like a Wicked Stab on the Efficient Octobot. Not very efficient for that turn. So net, you might be the same amount, but it's actually better to spend very little mana one turn and then a lot of mana the next turn. That's the kind of the way Rogue works. There's a lot of scalability that way. Every card you battle cry now, the Field Contact, because you're playing so many cards, gets so much value. It also scales with Prize Plunder, where because you're playing all these cards, Prize Plunder is a lot easier to get massive hits. So just the scalability of playing 12 mana worth of cards for Rogue one turn and 0 for another is a lot better in a lot of situations than playing 6 2 turns. So because of that, just the heavy scalability. Even we look at the Alexstrasza Tenwu combo. If you have Alexstrasza and Tenwu, and they're like 8 and 1 mana, for 10 mana you can deal 16, where normally you can't do that. And even though it might only take technically 9, 10, 12 mana to do without Efficient Octobot over 2 turns, usually your opponent's going to move your Dragon Queen Alexstrasza. So that's that same thing of just being able to do more mana in one turn as opposed to spreading out mana is very valuable for Rogue. So that's one of the big things that Efficient Octobot does. That's kind of a little more subtle. Not to mention the other one last thing, it's a 1/4, so 1/4s are very difficult to remove, and they're very difficult to deny this frenzy. If this were a 1/3 card, it would be far, far, far worse, or even a 2/3. Far, far, far worse, because it'd be just much easier to kill while not activating the frenzy mechanics. You would always have to use it with sort of an activator like Prize Plunder, instead of being able to get it activated sometimes just by using the board. Next, we got Caryl Ro. This card is a very strong card, and I think it was a kind of a sleeper at first. I think people didn't really think they weren't putting in their decks, and all of a sudden she was, we should really be running this in a lot of Paladin decks as opposed to Kazakhs. And I think she's really a compound of a lot of small, subtle things that add up massively. One, just as a 4/3 Divine Shield Rush, I think people just underestimated a 4/3 Divine Shield Rush. If you remember Restless Mummy, it was a 3/2 reborn, so kind of be rushed into 2 minions with as a 3/2. The first one is even better, but you get to keep the 4/3. So with the Restless Mummy, you might be able to do 3 damage 2 times, but you lose this. This you do a 4 attack, so it can kill something even bigger than the Restless Mummy on the first one. The big only weakness of that is it doesn't have the second one, but you get to keep the 4/3. 2, you get a discount on everything, all the holy spells. So sometimes people, I think, they're like, oh, I don't have that many holy spells, but you get 1 or 2 discounts. All of a sudden, this is a 3-mana Caryl effectively, or a 2-mana Caryl effectively, on your net kind of tempo long term. So 2 mana is really good. Finally, she's a must-remove threat often, because the thing is, if you don't remove her, she's going to get even more discounts. So she's able to swing the board, discount your hand, and be must-remove. So all those things combined make her very strong, one of the strongest paladin cards out there. Just kind of subtle, but why all those 3 combined make her much, much stronger. But the final thing that makes her really strong, except for Kazakh, there's, like I said before, there aren't many good 4-drops outside of Kazakh, so especially a deck that doesn't even want to run Kazakh will really like her, because she just fills in that 4 slot nicely. If you look at Libram Paladin last expansion, just didn't run 4-drops. It went right from 3 to 5, and recoining out on 4 Aldor Truthseeker a lot, but didn't have a turn 4 play. So she's a nice turn 4 play slotted in that you can use as a paladin. Next, I got Underlight Angler. You probably thought one of this would make, but it's actually one of the strongest drawn win rate cards out there right now. To give you an idea of how strong this is, this card actually has a higher drawn win rate than Crab Rider. Yep, that's right. Better than Crab Rider. Everyone thinks Crab Rider is so OP. But this card actually, you're better off in a game having drawn this card than Crab Rider in general. And why do you think that is? And one, I think people, it's a 3-mana 3/2 weapon, so it has that general value. But I think the Murlocs is another subtle thing. It gives you more value. So that's 2 additional plays. And I think what's really nice about this is, imagine if you had a 10-mana card. Well, you get 10 mana worth of value, like a big 10-mana minion, but you can't play it till 10 mana. But it's a lot of value as 1 card. With Underlight Angler, not only you get the weapon hits, but you get the 2 Murlocs. And by getting those 2 Murlocs, it's just more value. So this card might be alone in your hand. Let's say you have 3 mana. It might fill up 2 different turns of plays while having a weapon, which weapons are generally good for tempo, because it might give you 2 2-drops, and then you play them, or even a 4-drop and a 3-drop, and then so it can just really fill out your curve, and just give you a lot more mana stuff to spend mana on over a few turns. As opposed to, especially Paladin, a class that doesn't have that much card draw, has more cycle, and has things that draw 1, but there aren't cards in Paladin class right now that draw 2 cards. Because of that, it's a nice way to get a lot of value from 1 card, as opposed to just putting big stuff in. So you put this card, actually will give you as much mana on stuff to spend as a Tyrion, but a Tyrion is a clunky card that you can't play till turn 8. This is, you have immediate weapon impact, and you get a bunch of cards that Murlocs you can use. And the Murlocs, while not fantastic, are just solid. There's a lot of just solid statted Murlocs. They don't have to be anything crazy. They can just be a 4/5 Nightmare Amalgam, or so sometimes you'll high roll something like Murgurgle Prime or Crab Rider, but you don't need to. It can just be just a good regular statted minion, and that can be very valuable. So this card is actually very strong right now, and I think people don't recognize, but that's kind of what goes on, why this card can be so good in decks. Next, we got Ring Toss. And this is a card that I think people don't realize how good it is. I'm almost always running it 2 of in Secret, in No Minion Mage. I think some people will cut 1, and I think that's a mistake. I think this is a very strong card. But the weaknesses of it is a little bit slow. To get the max value out of it, you have to play a higher cost minion. But I think one of the really nice things about Ring Toss is the flexible secrets. With 2 secrets, you're very likely to get a secret. And as you play lots of different matches, you can learn what secrets what decks are incredibly weak to certain secrets. One example is Mirror Entity in certain matchups, especially like Priest, especially against a controlling Priest that might run Malagos or Ysera, can be fantastic. So I like to, with Ring Toss, you really like playing it on key turns to force players to play around it. So, because they know you're very likely to get the card you're looking for. So if I'm playing against a Demon Hunter, they're going into their turn 6 and they don't have the coin. I play this card. Maybe I go in a Plexus Blast. I go coin a Plexus Blast on 4. They do something, and then I go Ring Toss. And I don't even have to pick Counterspell, because are they going to not play around Counterspell? Probably not. They're probably going to play around it. A good play that they can do to effectively play around it, that a good Demon Hunter will do against a Mage, is keep the Ildari Studies, so they can play Ildari Studies to test for Counterspell. If it's not a Counterspell, now their Skull just goes down 1 mana. But there's just a lot of really cool things you can do with it. I was playing against Luna, and it was in my Grandmaster game with a Spell Mage, and she was going into turn 5, and she ran the double Ogre, the Ogremancer. And that's a card that's very strong against Mage. So I specifically timed it. I was able to get a discounted Ring Toss, and I was able to corrupt it going into her turn, before her turn 5. So on, I believe on my turn 4, I played the Ring Toss, and I got a Mirror Entity. But the thing is, I don't even need to get Mirror Entity. All of a sudden, she's just got a massive amount of risk, where if she plays the Ogremancer, all of a sudden I get this big 3/7 so effectively. So she has to play around that. And you can force players to play around your secrets very effectively, and just really slow down their plays, or put them in situations where they have to go for it, and if they go for it and they're wrong, they just lose. So a lot of times you put players in situations where they either play around the secret and makes their turn much worse, or they play into the secret, and if you have the secret, you just lose. So a really strong card that's a little more subtle. So this is a really, I think, a skill testing card, where just knowing your opponent's key turns, and knowing which turns your opponent is really vulnerable to secrets. Things like when they have very predictable plays. If your opponent's going to be going a Ysera, if your opponent's going to be going a Skull, if your opponent's going to be going an Ogremancer, especially with like open deck lists, there's just a lot of things you can do to just sort of, if you know your opponent's deck really well, to put them in weird situations, especially if you're good at hand reading and figuring out what does my opponent have, what are they going for. So very flexible card and a very strong card when used correctly. Next, we got Crab Rider. And this is a card that I rated as very, very strong, but I think it went on a lot of people's radar. And I think the reason why is I think people overestimate this card by itself, but underestimate it with other cards. So this card by itself, you can tell because it's not very good. You can tell because it is only played in 2 classes right now. It's technically run into some Priest lists and some Shaman lists that have decks that have a 45% win rate. Very bad decks. But it's really, really good in Paladin and Warrior. And I think the reason is obvious: buffs. By buffing up the Crab Rider, as a 1-attack Wind Fury, not very good. But as a 3-attack or a 5-attack, insanely good. And you're able to combine this over 2 turns. So especially with something like Coin Crab Rider into Hand of a Doll, a 3/6 Wind Fury minion normally would be over 4 mana, but at least without rush, and not able to play till turn 4 or turn 5. Where with that, we're able to, with the Crab Rider plus Hand of a Doll. Hand of a Doll is actually a strong card that I almost considered putting in this list. You're able to scale the Wind Fury. So 1-attack Wind Fury, not that good. 3-attack Wind Fury, very good. And the 4 health is also very useful because it's a lot harder to remove. So if you play it against an opponent who isn't contesting the board, you can just wreck them. So often as a player, you're trying to think, can I beat a Crab Rider if they play it down? Especially, is there a way I can contest a little bit better? So to be thinking about, can I stop this minion from getting on the board? So Paladin, Warrior, both have, like I said, both have things that scale. So they're able to make this Crab Rider buff and make it a lot stronger because than it would without the stuff. So that's the big reason. Also the Rush, very useful. So you're often able, and the Wind Fury, very useful as well. So sometimes you're able to do plays where, like, let's say you've had this buffed up. Let's say you got the 4 attack, and your opponent has a 3 attack, like let's say a 3/3 and a 5/4. You're able to trade on the 3/3 and then the 5/4 and get 2 value trades. This is a real nice advantage of Crab Rider because you're able to put the Crab Rider's health down to very little and then value trade into another minion. So that's something that a non-Wind Fury minion can't really do. So another element of why Crab Rider can be such a powerful card. So value trades, scalability with buff, and the general stat line is overall solid. But like I said, without the buffs, would probably not be seeing competitive play. But with the buffs, it's incredibly good. So that's all I've got for you guys today, but just wanted to go over the cards and just talk about why they're good. I might do this again sometime with just other cards, but I think people just have this, this card's just good and this card's just not. And like I said, I think the Kazakh Caryl was a really interesting situation where sometimes good cards might have reasons like opportunity costs that make them, or inability, lack of synergy. So like I said, if Warrior and Paladin didn't exist, Crab Rider might be seeing no play in the current meta. So because of that, like, certain cards are good with the synergies, and the synergies really scale them. But without the synergies, they're not just independently good. So I think people tend to overvalue cards that are independently good, but don't see the natural synergies, potential opportunity costs, all these other factors what make cards really strong. So hope you guys enjoyed this, and so if you're thinking about deck building, be thinking about these elements of what actually makes a card good and can I use it to make my deck better. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this, and see you later.